Elon Musk goes undercover as a taxi driver. His next move leaves the rich speechless. It was another bustling morning in New York City. The streets hummed with life as yellow cabs zipped past office buildings, each one carrying a story, a destination, and a sense of urgency. Among them was one cab, seemingly like any other, except for its driver. The man behind the wheel wore a neon green vest, a cap pulled low over his forehead, and a serious expression. No one would have guessed it, but the man driving that cab was none other than Elon Musk. Elon had a plan, and it was bold, even by his standards. For years, he had observed the widening gap between the elite and the working class. He had heard countless stories of struggling taxi drivers, working grueling hours just to make ends meet. But Elon wasn't content to sit back and listen. He wanted to experience it for himself. What better way to understand their struggles than to live it, to feel the daily grind and pressures of the job firsthand? He had taken every precaution to remain anonymous. His team had outfitted him with a convincing disguise, fake wrinkles, contact lenses to alter his eye color, and a well-worn uniform that blended seamlessly into the sea of taxi drivers. Even his voice was different, slightly rougher, and with a New York accent he had practiced for weeks. His first passenger of the day was a businessman in an expensive tailored suit. The man climbed into the back seat without so much as a glance at Elon. "Park Avenue and 53rd, the man barked, barely looking up from his phone. Elon nodded silently and started the meter. He weaved through the morning traffic with practiced ease, keeping his eyes on the road while listening to the man's phone conversation. It was a typical high-powered business call, filled with terms like merger, leverage, and ROI. The man in the back seat seemed oblivious to everything around him, until they hit a red light. That's when Elon noticed the man tapping his foot impatiently and muttering under his breath. "You know, if you take the next left, it'll be faster," the businessman said without looking up. Elon smiled to himself. He had already calculated the optimal route using a combination of GPS data and his innate engineering mind. "Trust me, sir," he said in his altered voice. "We'll get there on time." But the businessman wasn't having it. "Listen, buddy, I know these streets better than you. Just take the left." Elon nodded and complied, though he couldn't help but think how amusing it was to be taking orders from a man who had no idea he was directing one of the most brilliant minds in the world. He made the turn and continued driving, his mind already anticipating the next challenge. As they cruised down the streets, the businessman's phone call grew increasingly intense. "If this deal falls through, it's on you. I don't care how you do it, just make it happen," he snarled before hanging up with a huff. The man leaned back and finally looked around the cab, his gaze landing on Elon. "You cabbies really don't understand how much pressure guys like me are under," he said, shaking his head. "I work 16-hour days. It's brutal." Elon raised an eyebrow under his cap. "Sounds rough," he replied, keeping his tone neutral. "You wouldn't believe it," the man continued. "I've closed deals worth more than your entire annual salary, probably in a single day." Elon chuckled softly. "Impressive," he said. "But sometimes, working under pressure isn't about the money, it's about the people you help." The businessman frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well," Elon said, "taxi drivers get people where they need to go. Some are rushing to job interviews that might change their lives. Others are on their way to see a loved one for the last time. Every ride carries a story, a moment that matters." The businessman scoffed. "Yeah, well, you can't pay bills with moments?" Elon said nothing, his mind flashing back to the hundreds of workers he had met over the years, people who poured their hearts into their jobs but barely scraped by. He knew this man in the back seat was out of touch, living in a bubble where numbers on a screen mattered more than the lives they represented. As they approached the destination, the businessman leaned forward. "Thanks for the ride," he said, handing Elon a 20. "Keep the change." Elon took the bill and nodded. "Have a good day," he said as the man climbed out of the cab. Moments later, his next passenger appeared, a young woman carrying several shopping bags. She smiled warmly as she settled into the back seat. "Union Square, please," she said. Elon couldn't help but notice the contrast between her and his previous passenger. She was polite, cheerful, and genuinely interested in the world around her. Busy day? Elon asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Oh, definitely, she replied. I'm running errands for a fundraiser we're hosting tonight. It's to help struggling families in the city. That's amazing, Elon said, genuinely impressed. What kind of support does the fundraiser provide? We focus on food security and affordable housing, she explained. New York is so expensive. It's heartbreaking to see hardworking people barely able to survive. Elon nodded thoughtfully. The woman's words resonated deeply with him. He had always believed that technology could solve many of the world's problems, but hearing her speak reminded him of the importance of community and human connection. As they reached Union Square, the woman handed Elon a flyer. If you're free tonight, you should come by, she said. It's open to everyone. Elon took the flyer and smiled. I just might do that. Thank you. After dropping her off, Elon found himself reflecting on the day's events. The contrast between his two passengers couldn't have been starker. One was caught up in the high-stakes world of finance, while the other was dedicated to making a difference in her community. Both represented different sides of the city, a city filled with ambition, struggle, and heart. Just as he was deep in thought, his radio crackled to life. All units, be advised, traffic is heavy near 5th and Madison. Avoid the area if possible. Elon adjusted his route accordingly. He knew how to adapt, whether in business or on the streets. But as he continued his undercover mission, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was waiting for him at the end of the day. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the city, Elon's cab rolled through the bustling streets, blending in effortlessly. His phone buzzed quietly in his pocket, a reminder that his real life as one of the world's most influential innovators was just a call away. Yet, in this moment, he was fully immersed in the simple, unfiltered world of everyday life. His next passenger was a middle-aged man in a worn-out business suit. The man looked exhausted, his eyes shadowed by fatigue and worry. He climbed into the cab and muttered, "Times Square, please." "Rough day?" Elon asked, trying to engage him in conversation. The man sighed deeply. "You could say that. I lost my job today." "I'm sorry to hear that," Elon replied, genuinely concerned. "What happened?" "The company I worked for downsized," the man explained. "I've been there for 20 years, but that didn't seem to matter. One meeting, and suddenly I'm out on the street." Elon nodded, empathizing with the man's situation. "What kind of work did you do?" "Finance," the man said. "But not the high-rolling kind. I helped families manage their savings, set up retirement plans. Nothing glamorous, but it was honest work." There was a long pause as the man stared out the window. "I don't know what I'll do now," he admitted quietly. "It's hard starting over at my age." Elon gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, his mind racing. He had met countless people like this man, dedicated workers who gave their best, only to be discarded when they were no longer seen as useful. It was a story as old as the corporate world itself. "You know," Elon said after a moment, "sometimes, losing one thing makes room for something better. Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" The man laughed bitterly. "With what money? Banks don't exactly line up to give loans to unemployed middle-aged men." Elon smiled thoughtfully. "You might be surprised who's willing to invest in a good idea." As they reached Times Square, the man pulled out his wallet to pay, but Elon waved him off. "This one's on me," he said. "Thank you," the man said, visibly touched. "You're a good man." Elon nodded. "Good luck. And remember, sometimes the best opportunities come when you least expect them." After the man stepped out, Elon leaned back in his seat, his thoughts swirling. The day had given him a rare glimpse into the real challenges that so many people faced, challenges that couldn't be solved with a flashy new product or a viral tweet. It was humbling and inspiring in equal measure. His next ride request came almost immediately. The destination, a luxury hotel uptown. He accepted and drove toward the address, curious about what the next encounter would bring. When he arrived, a well-dressed couple climbed into the cab. Their clothes were designer, and their conversation was filled with mentions of expensive vacations and exclusive social clubs. They barely acknowledged Elon as they continued their animated discussion. "And I told him, if he can't get the deal done by Friday, We'll find someone who can, the man said with a smug grin. Absolutely, the woman agreed. No sense wasting time on incompetence. Elon listened silently, his face neutral. It was a familiar tone, the language of power and privilege. But beneath their polished exteriors, he sensed something fragile, almost desperate, in their words. These were people who measured their worth in status and success, constantly chasing the next big thing. When they finally reached their destination, the man handed Elon a $100 bill. Keep the change, he said dismissively. Thanks, Elon replied with a slight nod. As they walked away, Elon couldn't help but reflect on how easily people could lose themselves in the pursuit of wealth and power. It was a lesson he had learned firsthand, and one he had vowed never to forget. By the time his shift ended, the city was alive with the hum of nighttime energy. Elon returned the cab to the garage, thanking the dispatcher before stepping back into his usual identity. The experiences of the day lingered with him, a powerful reminder of the importance of staying grounded. Later that evening, as he sat in his office overlooking the city, Elon pulled out the flyer the woman had given him earlier. The fundraiser was still happening, just a few blocks away. He smiled to himself and decided to pay a visit. The community center was bustling with activity when he arrived. Volunteers handed out meals, children played in the courtyard, and families gathered to share stories and laughter. It was a beautiful sight, a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. Elon quietly made his way through the crowd, listening and observing. No one recognized him, which suited him just fine. He didn't want to be a celebrity tonight, just a man among many, witnessing the incredible power of kindness and community. As Elon walked through the bustling community center, he noticed a young girl sitting alone at one of the tables, carefully sketching something on a piece of paper. She couldn't have been older than 10, her curly hair framing a face full of concentration. He approached quietly and took a seat across from her. "That's a really good drawing," he said, pointing to the paper. "Is that a rocket?" The girl looked up, surprised at first, but then nodded shyly. "It's going to Mars," she said. "Just like the ones I saw on TV." Elon smiled. "You like space?" "I love space," she said with enthusiasm. "One day, I'm going to be the first girl to live on Mars." "That's a great dream," Elon said, his heart warming at her determination. "And what's your name, future Mars explorer?" "Luna," she replied proudly. "Well, Luna," Elon said, "I think you're going to do amazing things." Luna grinned, then held up her drawing. "Do you really think I can go to Mars?" Elon leaned in, his tone serious. "I don't just think it, I know it. And if you ever need help getting there, I'll be the first to sign up as your biggest supporter." They sat for a few moments, sharing a quiet understanding. Elon's mind flashed back to his own childhood, filled with dreams of space and endless possibilities. He saw a spark in Luna's eyes, a spark that reminded him of why he had started everything in the first place. As the night wore on, the community center began to wind down. Elon wandered to the back of the hall, where a group of volunteers were packing up leftover supplies. One of them, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stopped to chat. "Thank you for helping tonight," she said, not recognizing him. "We can always use an extra pair of hands." "It's my pleasure," Elon replied, picking up a box of canned goods to help. The woman sighed, looking around at the emptying room. "It's tough sometimes, you know. So many families struggling just to get by. We do what we can, but it never feels like enough." Elon paused, his thoughts racing. He had witnessed the same struggles all day. The man who lost his job, the young girl with dreams bigger than her circumstances, and the countless people who simply needed a break. The solutions weren't always easy, but one thing was clear: they needed someone to believe in them. He set down the box and looked at the woman. What if there was a way to make this place even bigger, with more resources and opportunities for everyone? The woman blinked, caught off guard. "That would be a dream come true," she said. "But where would we get the money?" Elon grinned, the wheels in his mind turning. "Leave that part to me." The following morning, Elon sat at his desk, drafting a plan. The goal was ambitious but not impossible. He wanted to expand the community center into a full-scale support hub, a place where families could find job assistance, educational programs, mental health resources, and even temporary housing for those in need. He picked up the phone and made a few calls. By noon, several of his most trusted advisors were on board, eager to help turn his vision into reality. The logistics would take time, but Elon was determined to make it happen. Within weeks, construction on the expanded center had begun. Local contractors were hired to renovate the building, creating classrooms, a tech lab, and a large open space for community gatherings. Donations poured in from across the city, inspired by the project's mission and Elon's personal involvement. Word spread quickly. News outlets picked up the story, dubbing it Elon's kind gesture, and the hashtag Elon's kindness began trending on social media. People from all walks of life shared their stories, pledging their support for the initiative. On the day of the grand reopening, the newly renovated center was filled with excitement. Families gathered outside, eager to see the transformation. Volunteers buzzed around, making final preparations. Luna stood at the front of the crowd, her eyes wide with anticipation. When Elon stepped onto the small makeshift stage, the crowd erupted in applause. He raised a hand to quiet them, his voice steady and warm. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "This project is about more than just a building. It's about hope, about giving people the tools they need to build a better future. I've had the privilege of meeting so many incredible people in this community, and I want you to know that we're just getting started." The crowd cheered, and Elon continued. "This isn't just my project, it's ours. Together, we can create something truly extraordinary." He paused, scanning the crowd until his eyes landed on Luna. "And to the young dreamers out there," he added with a smile, "never stop believing in the impossible. Because sometimes, with a little help, the impossible becomes reality." As the crowd roared with applause, Elon stepped down from the stage and began mingling with the families gathered around the newly expanded center. Volunteers led tours through the renovated spaces, pointing out the tech lab filled with rows of computers, the classrooms designed for adult education programs, and the child care area with colorful murals painted on the walls. Children ran through the center, their laughter filling the air as they explored the new play areas. Parents followed close behind, some with tears in their eyes as they realized how much this place could change their lives. Luna was among them, proudly dragging her mother from one room to another. "Look, Mom, there's even a science lab. They said we can do experiments here." Her mother, a woman in her early 30s with tired but hopeful eyes, smiled and pulled her daughter into a hug. "This place is amazing, Luna. It's like a new beginning for all of us." Nearby, Elon stood quietly, watching the scene unfold. It was moments like these that made every challenge worthwhile. He had faced his fair share of criticism and doubt, but seeing the direct impact of his efforts reminded him why he never stopped pushing boundaries. A man approached him hesitantly, holding a little boy by the hand. "Mr. Musk, I just wanted to say thank you," the man said, his voice thick with emotion. "I lost my job 6 months ago, and it's been rough. But this place gave me a lifeline. My son finally has a safe space to learn and grow. We owe you more than words can express." Elon reached out and shook the man's hand. "You don't owe me anything," he said sincerely. "This is a community effort. I'm just glad I could help." The little boy, clutching a toy rocket in his hand, looked up at Elon with wide eyes. "Are you really the guy who builds spaceships?" Elon chuckled. "I am. You like rockets?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. "I want to go to space one day." Elon crouched down to his level. "Then you better keep dreaming big. And when you're ready, maybe you'll help us build the next rocket?" The boy beamed, clutching his toy even tighter. As the day continued, the local news station set up a camera crew outside the center, eager to capture the event. A young reporter in a crisp blue suit stood near the entrance, holding a microphone as he prepared to go live. "This is a story unlike any other," the reporter began, his voice steady and professional. "In an unprecedented move, Elon Musk has not only donated millions to expand this community center, but he's also taken a hands-on approach in creating a space designed to uplift and transform lives. Today, the community celebrates a brighter future thanks to one man's extraordinary vision. Elon watched the broadcast from the corner of the courtyard, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. He knew that the attention would fade eventually, as it always did. But what mattered most was the lasting change the center would bring. That evening, after most of the crowd had dispersed, Elon lingered near the entrance, enjoying the quiet hum of the city around him. The sky had turned a soft shade of pink as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. "Mr. Musk," a familiar voice called out. It was the woman he had spoken with weeks earlier, the volunteer who had inspired him to take action. She stood next to him, her expression filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You've given this community something we never thought possible." Elon smiled. Hope is a powerful thing. Sometimes, it's all people need to start changing their lives. The woman nodded, looking around the bustling center. "You've reminded us that we're not alone. That we matter." They stood in silence for a moment, watching as a group of children played soccer in the courtyard. Their laughter echoed through the streets, a symbol of newfound possibility. A few weeks later, the impact of the center had already started to ripple throughout the city. Families who once struggled found new opportunities through the job placement programs. Children excelled in school thanks to tutoring and access to technology. And for the first time in a long time, people felt a sense of belonging. Elon returned to the center often, quietly checking in on the progress. He rarely made a grand entrance, preferring to blend in with the crowd. One afternoon, he sat in the back of a computer literacy class, watching as an elderly man learned how to use email for the first time. The man looked up, confused. "I'm not sure what to click next," he admitted. Elon leaned over with a friendly smile. "Here, let me help." Within minutes, the man was typing away, his eyes lighting up with excitement as he discovered new possibilities. "I can talk to my grandson with this?" he asked. "Absolutely," Elon said. "And I'm sure he'll be happy to hear from you." By now, Elon's initiative had inspired other philanthropists and business leaders to get involved. Donations continued to pour in, allowing for further expansions and new programs. What had started as a small project had grown into a movement, proof that even the most ambitious dreams could become reality with the right mindset. The weeks that followed transformed the center into the beating heart of the neighborhood. Families that once felt forgotten now had access to resources they never thought possible. Inside the community center's bustling classrooms, students of all ages filled the seats, eager to learn. Some studied computer programming, others brushed up on financial literacy or worked toward earning their GEDs. For many, it was the first time in years they felt hopeful about the future. Among them was Sarah, a single mother who had lost her job during the economic downturn. 4 months, she struggled to make ends meet, bouncing between temporary shelters and odd jobs just to feed her 2 children. But the community center had given her an opportunity she couldn't refuse, a scholarship for job training and access to free childcare while she studied. "I feel like I can breathe again," she told one of the volunteers, her voice cracking with emotion. "For the first time, I'm not just surviving. I'm building something for my kids." Her story wasn't unique. Every person in the center had a story of hardship, resilience, and, finally, a chance to turn things around. And at the center of it all was Elon, quietly observing from the background. He walked the halls, taking in the hum of activity. His casual attire, a hoodie and jeans, allowed him to blend in. Most people didn't recognize him at first glance, which was exactly how he preferred it. He wanted to experience the place as they did, without the fanfare. One afternoon, while exploring the newly opened makerspace, Elon spotted a group of teenagers gathered around a 3D printer. Their project, a model of a Mars rover, looked promising. He couldn't resist stepping in to offer some advice. "Looks like you're building something cool," he said, approaching with a smile. One of the teens turned to him, holding up the partially printed model. "We're trying to replicate the Mars rover, but we're having trouble with the wheels." Elon knelt beside the table, examining the model closely. "You've got the right idea, but the wheel design might be too rigid for rough terrain. Have you tried using a flexible material for better traction?" The teens looked at him with wide eyes, impressed not just by his knowledge but by how approachable he was. They quickly adjusted their design, incorporating his suggestions. "You're really good at this," one of them said. You should work for SpaceX. Elon chuckled. I'll think about it. Word about the center's success spread quickly, drawing the attention of local media and eventually catching the eye of national outlets. Journalists flocked to the neighborhood, eager to capture stories of transformation and hope. One morning, as a news crew filmed in front of the building, Elon found himself face to face with a familiar reporter, the same one who had once written a scathing piece about him during a controversial project launch. The reporter, caught off guard by Elon's presence, hesitated before stepping forward. "Mr. Musk," she began, "I didn't expect to see you here." Elon gave a polite nod. People tend to show up where they're needed. The reporter paused, clearly grappling with how to frame her next question. "I have to admit, when I heard about this project, I was skeptical. But after seeing what's happening here, it's clear this is more than just a publicity stunt." "It was never about publicity," Elon replied, his tone calm but firm. "It's about creating real change. People need hope and opportunity, not just words, but action." The reporter nodded, genuinely impressed. "If you don't mind, I'd like to do a follow-up piece. One that tells the real story." Elon considered it for a moment. "If it helps inspire others to get involved, go for it. This place isn't about me. It's about the community." The article that followed was nothing short of glowing. Titled "A Billionaire's Quiet Revolution," it painted a vivid picture of the transformation taking place in the heart of the city. Photos of the community center filled the pages. Children learning, parents working on resumes, volunteers helping wherever they could. At the center of it all was a candid shot of Elon, surrounded by the very people his initiative had helped. The piece went viral almost immediately, sparking conversations across social media. Celebrities, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike praised the project, many asking how they could get involved. Donations poured in from all corners of the country. More importantly, similar centers began popping up in other cities, each inspired by Elon's vision. It was a ripple effect, one act of kindness inspiring countless others. One evening, as the center prepared to close for the night, Elon stood at the front steps, watching the last few families leave. The sky above was painted in shades of orange and pink, the air filled with the scent of fresh-baked bread from a nearby bakery. The volunteer he had spoken with on his first visit approached him, holding a clipboard. "We're expanding faster than we ever expected," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We'll need more staff, more space, more everything." Elon smiled. "Then we'll make it happen." The volunteer hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Why did you do this? I mean, you've got so much on your plate. What made you take on something this big?" Elon's expression softened. "I've always believed that technology can change the world. But it's not enough to just build rockets and electric cars. Real change starts with people. If we want a better future, we have to invest in communities. We have to give people the tools to succeed." She nodded, understanding his words on a deeper level. "Well, you've certainly given this community a future." Months later, the center held a grand celebration to mark its one-year anniversary. The courtyard was filled with food trucks, live music, and families enjoying the warm summer evening. Elon stood off to the side, sipping a lemonade as he watched the festivities unfold. A little girl ran up to him, clutching a crayon drawing. "Mr. Musk, I made this for you." He crouched down, taking the picture from her. It was a drawing of a rocket ship with the words, "Thank you," Elon scrawled across the top. "This is amazing," he said, holding it up. "You've got real talent." The girl beamed. "When I grow up, I'm going to build rockets just like you." Elon smiled, touched by her words. "I can't wait to see what you create."